Before we dive into today's intense story, a quick reminder. Over 90% of our viewers watch our videos but aren't subscribed. If you enjoy content like this, take a second to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. And if you find this story gripping, don't forget to like the video. It really helps us out.
I still remember the day I married Ray. It was the kind of day you see in picture-perfect movies. Sunlight spilling over a hilltop garden, laughter floating on the breeze, and promises exchanged like sacred truths. I believed in him, in us. I believed that we were starting a life built on honesty, love, and the unshakable certainty that we were each other's home. For a long time, I didn't question anything. That's the strange part. When you love someone deeply, your mind naturally filters out the shadows. Ray wasn't perfect, but he was mine. Steady, calm, logical, everything I thought I needed. I admired his dedication to his work, even if it meant he was often late coming home or preoccupied during our dinners. He ran a logistics company, managing fleets and warehouses, and I knew it wasn't a 9-to-5 life. I made excuses for him constantly. He's just tired. It's a tough quarter. He'll make it up to me on the weekend. But weekends started feeling like Mondays, and his phone, once casually forgotten on counters, became a second skin, always on him, always face down. The first time I felt something shift, it was subtle. We were watching a show together, something he used to love, and I laughed at a scene. Normally, he would have squeezed my hand or smiled, but that night, he didn't react at all. He was there, but not present. His eyes were on the screen, but his mind was galaxies away. I told myself I was imagining things, paranoia maybe, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something real was unraveling. One evening, he came home unusually late, midnight. He looked surprised to see me still awake. "You didn't have to wait," he said, dropping his keys a little too loudly into the bowl. Traffic was insane. "From where?" I asked, not accusing, just curious. "Warehouse," he said too quickly. "Had to handle some paperwork. You know how it is." I did know, or I thought I did, but his shirt smelled faintly of perfume, one I didn't wear. It lingered just long enough to make my heart thud. Still, I said nothing. I kissed his cheek, made him tea, and sat next to him while he scrolled through his phone in silence. I convinced myself I was overthinking. After all, if you start questioning everything, where does it end? Days became weeks. The distance between us grew. He started going on work trips that never existed before. New names came up in conversations, colleagues I had never heard of, suddenly critical to his schedule. And then I saw it. The mistake that changed everything. It was a Thursday morning. He was in the shower and his phone buzzed twice. Normally, I wouldn't have looked, but something told me to. The screen lit up with a message from a contact saved as J. The preview read, "Last night was perfect. I can't stop thinking about you." My breath caught. I opened it. The rest of the message was a trail of hearts and a photo, not explicit, just a cozy, dimly lit picture of 2 glasses of wine on a nightstand and a man's watch beside them. His watch. I felt cold all over. Like my body knew something before my mind fully registered it. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared at the screen, trying to recognize the world I was suddenly standing in. A world where my husband had someone else. A world where I was the fool, not the partner. When he came out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, I handed him his phone and said nothing. I watched his face. He saw the open message and I saw the flicker. Fear, guilt, and then the mask. He tried to smile. "It's not what it looks like," he said, the classic line. I didn't respond. I went to the kitchen, made coffee, and sat in silence. My world had just cracked open, and yet everything looked the same. The same mugs, the same morning light, the same hum of the refrigerator, but nothing felt real anymore. That day, I called in sick to work. I needed to think, to breathe. I walked around the block 5 times before I stopped at a cafe and sat at the back. I didn't cry until the coffee came. The moment the waitress set it down, her simple kindness shattered something inside me. The tears spilled quietly. I wiped them away before anyone could notice. In the days that followed, Ray tried to pretend nothing happened. He became overly kind, bringing flowers, making breakfast, even suggesting we take a trip. But it was too late. Once trust breaks, every gesture feels like a performance. I needed answers. I needed to understand who Jay was and how long this had been going on. I didn't confront him directly again. I needed evidence. So I became someone I never thought I'd be, a quiet observer in my own life. I installed a simple tracking app on his phone. I created a dummy social media profile to search for anyone who fit the puzzle. I checked phone records, receipts, even the dash cam in our second car. Every detail added another thread to the tangled web of betrayal. It wasn't long before I found her. Jessica, mid-30s, worked in a company that partnered with Ray's. I recognized her from a conference we attended together 2 years ago. Back then, I had thought she was nice, friendly, too friendly maybe. She had asked too many questions about Ray, complimented our marriage, said we were such a strong couple. That day, I hadn't thought much of it. Now I saw it differently. Their affair had been going on for almost a year. Business trips were a cover. Meetings were lies. She wasn't just a fling. She was woven into his new life, the life he had built in the shadows while smiling in ours. I thought about leaving him, packing my bags and disappearing without a word. But something in me shifted. I didn't want to run. I didn't want to cry in silence while he walked free. He needed to feel what I felt, confused, powerless, betrayed. But I wouldn't scream or break things. I would take my time. I would be smart, strategic. After all, I knew him better than anyone else. I knew his habits, his pride, his flaws, and I knew exactly where to start. The first step was playing the part. I became the doting wife again, attentive, supportive, smiling. I asked about his work, massaged his shoulders when he came home, left sweet notes in his suitcase. He believed I was healing, that the worst was over. But behind that smile, I was preparing the ground. I met with a lawyer discreetly. I began separating our finances without drawing attention. I took over bill payments and quietly removed his name from shared accounts. I gathered proof, texts, photos, recordings, stored in a hidden cloud folder. I updated my will, protected my inheritance, and ensured my name was clear on everything that mattered. At the same time, I began visiting Jessica's workplace under different pretenses. I learned things, her weaknesses, her ambitions, her insecurities. I never approached her directly. That wasn't my style. But I left breadcrumbs, little reminders that someone was watching, an anonymous gift that mirrored one Ray had once given her, a printed message on her car windshield, "He lies to you too," just enough to make her look over her shoulder. Ray started noticing changes. "You've been so happy lately," he said one night, holding my hand across the table. "I feel like we're getting back to us." I nodded. "Me too." But I was miles ahead. I had already set the chessboard, and now it was time to start moving pieces. There's a saying, revenge is a dish best served cold. I didn't want revenge out of rage. I wanted it to reclaim myself, to show him, show them, that I wasn't weak or blind or disposable, that I could burn down their lies with a smile. I wasn't done yet. This was only the beginning. From the outside, everything looked peaceful. We went on a weekend trip to the hills, took smiling pictures at a vineyard, and even had dinner with his parents where I laughed and poured him wine like the perfect wife. But inside, I was ice, focused. Every move I made was intentional now. I wasn't reacting to the pain anymore. I was planning what to do with it. After collecting all the proof I needed, I didn't go to the authorities. Not yet. I needed the perfect moment, and that moment was closer than Ray imagined. His company was organizing a mid-year partners retreat at a luxury resort. He mentioned it casually one evening while checking his email. "I'll be away for 3 days," he said, barely looking at me. "Just the usual, some team building, some workshops, nothing exciting." But I already knew Jessica would be there. What he didn't know was that I had been speaking to one of his colleagues anonymously. Posing as a potential business partner, I arranged a casual meeting at the same resort. I even reserved a room 2 doors down from his. When he left that Thursday morning, suitcase in hand, I kissed his cheek and told him, "I'll miss you." That night, I checked into the hotel under a different name. It's funny how predictable people become when they think they're untouchable. I watched them from a distance, him and Jessica, laughing over drinks at the hotel bar. They leaned in close, whispering things. He touched her arm, she played with her hair. I felt nothing. Not jealousy, not heartbreak, just confirmation. These were not people who had made a mistake. They were 2 grown adults who had chosen lies again and again. I didn't confront them. That would have been too easy. Instead, I waited until the next day. During one of their conference breaks, I slipped into his room. I knew the password to his laptop. He never changed it. I copied emails, travel records, and even found expense reports where he had filed romantic dinners as client meetings. My evidence folder was now complete. But I had more in mind than just collecting receipts. Back home, I had quietly connected with a woman named Tara. She was Jessica's ex-colleague, someone I had tracked through her social media. Tara had once been close to her but cut ties after a professional fallout. It took some effort, but eventually she opened up to me. Jessica had a secret. She'd falsified several documents to fast-track her promotion. I didn't plan to expose her for revenge alone. I just wanted her to know what it felt like to lose the things she clung to. I left the resort without being seen. 2 days later, Jessica received an anonymous envelope at her office. Inside, proof of her HR misconduct and copies of the falsified reports. I didn't attach a name, just the word, truth. I heard later that she was suspended pending an investigation. Ray never mentioned it to me, but I could sense his discomfort every time I asked, "How's Jessica these days?" He didn't answer. That was phase 1. Phase 2 was more personal. I began preparing for what I called my departure, but not the way Ray would expect. I didn't want to leave the house crying with suitcases in hand. I wanted to leave standing tall, with him watching everything he built fall around him. We owned a small apartment in my name, one we never used, a leftover from my single days. I had it redecorated quietly, turned it into a space that felt like me again. While Ray thought we were getting closer, I was already gone in spirit. I had moved half my clothes, my documents, and some personal items into the apartment without him noticing. Then came the financial unraveling. Ray had always trusted me with the day-to-day finances, but I never touched the core of his business, until now. I contacted his accountant, someone I had met at a few events, and requested a wife's summary report under the pretense of preparing a will. To my surprise, the accountant didn't question it. What I received stunned me. Ray had been hiding debts, large ones, personal loans, misappropriated business funds, and silent investors he never mentioned. His company wasn't as successful as I thought. It was bleeding. Worse, he had used some of our joint holdings to cover temporary gaps. That's when I decided he didn't deserve protection anymore. I took that report and made 3 copies. One for my lawyer, one for his silent investor who I tracked down through a business listing, and one for Ray himself, which I placed inside a plain white envelope on his desk with a note that read, "I know everything." I wasn't home when he found it. I was already at my apartment, sipping tea in a sunlit kitchen, breathing freely for the first time in months. When he called, his voice was strained. "We need to talk." "I don't think we do," I said calmly. "Everything I needed to say is in that envelope." "I can explain—" "No," I interrupted. "You can't. You had months to explain, Ray. You chose lies. Now you'll live with the consequences." He showed up at my apartment the next morning. I didn't let him in. I watched from the peephole as he knocked again and again. When he finally gave up, I saw something on his face I hadn't seen in a long time. Fear. I thought I'd feel triumphant. Instead, I felt clean, empty in a good way, like a wound that had finally stopped bleeding. The fallout began quickly. His investor pulled out. His board started questioning him. Jessica vanished from his life once her job crumbled. And Ray, once confident, once smooth, began unraveling. Friends called me to ask if I was okay. I told them yes, I was more than okay. I was free. I filed for divorce a week later. He begged, cried, said he'd lost his way, that he was confused and lonely. I didn't respond to most of it. There was no point. I had already forgiven myself for believing in him. That was the only forgiveness I owed anyone. At the hearing, he looked small, worn out. His lawyer asked for leniency. Mine presented the evidence file. The judge didn't look pleased. I walked away with the apartment, my savings protected, and full control of our joint assets that he had misused. He was left with debts, investigations, and the ruin he created. But the final move was still mine to make. I decided to share my story, not out of spite, but as a warning. I didn't name names, I didn't expose identities, but I told the truth in a quiet, dignified way on a blog I had anonymously started. To my surprise, hundreds of women reached out. Some shared their own stories. Others thanked me. One woman even said my post gave her the courage to leave an abusive partner. That meant more than revenge. That meant something lasting. Ray called me a month after the divorce was finalized. He didn't beg this time. "I don't know who I am anymore," he said. "You were always that person," I replied. "You just never thought you'd get caught." Silence. "I miss you." I paused. "I don't miss the man you were, and I never met the man you pretended to be. So no, Ray, I don't miss you." I hung up, and I didn't cry. That night, I looked out from my apartment balcony and smiled, not because I won, but because I found myself again, stronger, wiser, unbreakable. But my story isn't done. There's one more part. The part where I truly start over and where I make sure no one else takes my silence for weakness again. It's been 6 months since the divorce was finalized. I thought revenge would feel loud, explosive, but instead it felt like peace, like finally being able to breathe without second-guessing myself. The chaos had ended, but something better had begun. My own life on my terms. I redecorated my apartment entirely. Every corner was mine. No echoes of a shared past, no lingering memories to dull the light. I filled my shelves with books I loved, framed photographs of places I wanted to see, and even adopted a dog named Milo who made every silent morning feel warm. I started teaching again, something I had put on hold to support Ray's chaotic schedule. It gave me purpose, structure, and most importantly, independence. The students didn't know anything about my past, and I liked it that way. To them, I was just Ms. Rena, dedicated, focused, and a little too passionate about literature. Word about Ray spread quietly. His company folded. He sold his car. Jessica was seen working a lower-tier job in a different city. They faded from the spotlight quickly. People stopped talking. Life moved on. But I didn't gloat. I didn't watch from the sidelines hoping for more damage. That was never the goal. My revenge was never about destroying him. It was about rebuilding me. The old version of me, the trusting wife who gave everything, was gone. In her place stood a woman who now knew that loyalty should never cost your self-respect. Sometimes, on quiet nights, I reflect. I think about how close I came to losing myself completely, how easily I could have disappeared into bitterness or despair. But instead, I found something deeper, resilience. I learned to protect my heart without hardening it, to fight back without becoming cruel. I've since shared my story in a few support groups, always anonymously, and each time someone new says, "I thought I was the only one." That's what betrayal does. It isolates you, makes you believe you're alone in your shame, but you're not. None of us are. I'm not bitter anymore, just better. And if Ray ever wonders how I survived it all, how I came out stronger than he left me, It's simple. He broke my heart, but I used every piece to build my freedom.